Okay, here's a quick video to get your Dragster Blank set up the way that you guys need to. We talked about this today, but we're putting this together to kind of help you be successful. So the first thing you do is you want to start, if you haven't already done this, we're going to start a brand new model. So we click on the hamburger icon, we're going to click on New Model, and we're going to choose that we want to do a template in millimeters. So we're going to select our template in millimeters. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to click on Temple, and we don't want to use Temple, so we're going to click on Temple, hit the backspace to get rid of her, and we're going to start. So we start with our pencil, click once, left click. When I say click, that means left click. If I mean to double click, I'll tell you to click twice, or right click. So we're going to click once again on the pencil icon. Our icon will change into a pencil. We move it until we get to where it says origin to let us know that we're at the origin point of our blue axis, which is going to be the height, the green axis, which is going to be the width, and the red axis, which is going to be the length. So where those three lines meet at the origin, we're going to click once. That's going to start our pen drop. We're going to start to move up along the blue axis, and we are going to type in 75. All of the measurements that I'm giving you are the maximums. You can use and your discretion and come up with minimums if you would like to. I'm giving you the maximums, the biggest that your race car can be. So if you go with the maximums, you'll have the largest car with the most drag that you could possibly have, probably be the slowest. So once I do 75, I hit the enter key. That shows and creates my line. I'm zoomed pretty far out, so I can't really see what my model looks like. So I'm going to go over here to my bottom tool, which is the orbit by default. We are going to select the zoom extents. If we hover over, it's going to be the bottom one. That's going to zoom us in so that we see our black line along the blue axis. We're still a little close, but that gets us a lot closer real fast. So I'm going to use my zoom tool. I'm going to click and hold. Move my finger down on the trackpad to slide myself out, click and hold, move my finger on the trackpad to slide myself out, and then I am going to orient my tool just the way that I want to by using the pan tool, and I'm going to slide it across so that my black line is kind of off to the left, and I've got a pretty good view. I might zoom out just a little bit more. This is personal preference for you for what you want to do. You're going to have to find what your view works for you, what view works for you. I'm going to go back to my pencil tool. I'm going to select the pencil tool once again. I'm going to go down to my end. It's now end point because it's the end point of my line, but it's also the origin point. Click once to drop my pencil. I'm going to move along the red axis, and I'm going to go the maximum distance by typing in 305. Hit enter, and I've got a 305 millimeter line going out the width. Then I go to my endpoint. I haven't clicked again because I've already got my pencil down. I'm just going to go straight up. I want to make sure that it's not on the green axis. It's not just a black line. I want to make it so that it's a blue line, and it'll say on blue axis. So I'm going to go up on the blue axis. The maximum distance is 42. And there's the maximum height of my car. It's 42 millimeters. Then I'm going to go from the end point, and I'm just going to connect to my endpoint at the top, and that is the basic brick shape of my car. From here, I can select the push-pull tool, push-pull tool, push-pull tool. I'm going to select the side of my face, and I'm going to push forward. The maximum height is going to be, or maximum width is going to be 42. I'm going to push that through. So that's going to be the maximum width of my car. If I move my orbit tool and I look around, I have pretty much a block that is almost a rectangular block. Okay, that's not a very aerodynamic brick by any means. What you guys will definitely want to do is adjust the height on your front axis here. The lower, you're going to get more angle for your drag. Okay, so we could just as easily have gone with something much lower. I'm going to back up a couple of steps to show you guys what you could do. So if I back up 2 steps here, right, and I go back to my drawing line, I could just as easily from my endpoint gone up and say I only wanted to go up 20 millimeters along that blue axis and then connect across. You can see I have a much more refined angle for my wing, or what would be known as the angle of attack, where the wind will go up. I still use my push-pull tool, push it through, and I do 42 for my 42 millimeters, and I have got a car that is a little bit sleeker than what we originally had. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to use the orbit tool, and we're going to orbit around so that we can see the back of our car, and we are going to put in the hole for our CO2 cartridge. So I want to make sure that I've got a good view of this. So I'm going to use my pan tool. Again, I'm going to get it centered so that I've got a nice straight view at the back. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our measurement tool, which is at the bottom, the tape measure tool. We're going to click on the tape measure tool at the top here, and we're going to go across our green axis on the bottom until we get to what's known as the midpoint. The midpoint is going to be the blue line that's going to be directly center along our back green axis, which is the width of our car. We're going to go up that axis here, and we're going to be on our blue line, which is going to be going straight up. And what I want to do is I'm going to go up 40 millimeters. And let me start on my midpoint here. And oh, I gotta get it. So I'm going on my, let me undo this here real fast. Let's redo this. Select my tape measure tool. I'm gonna get to my midpoint line. I'm going straight up. Oh, not on that. I gotta go straight up. So I get onto the, so if I don't have it just right, it's going along the axis. Once I see my line coming up, I'm going to put in 40, and that's going to put my line right across 40 millimeters. It's going to be dead center. So this line is going to be my reference point. So now I've got a nice dotted line reference point that's 40 millimeters up, right where my hole needs to be. So now I'm going to choose my circle tool. I'm going to click on the circle tool. I'm going to go along this line that I just made, along this line, measurement line that I've got. So I know it's 40 millimeters up. So we're measured perfectly. I'm going to get right to my midpoint, which will show me right across there where it's intersected at the nice T. I'm going to click the button to drop my pencil, and I'm going to start to drag out my circle. Now our circle needs to have a total diameter of 19.5 millimeters. So if I do 19.5, here's what's going to happen. Oh, I'm going to do 19.5, and I hit that. You'll notice that that circle is really large. So here's the problem. When I do the 19.5, that gives me the radius, not the total diameter of my circle. So 19.5 is the total diameter. The radius is half of that diameter. So we need to take 19.5. We'll divide it by 2. For sake, we're going to round it up, so it needs to be 9.8. So what we're going to do is we're going to undo this. We're going to put our circle tool back in the middle here so we know where we want to be, right along that midpoint. We set it down, and I'm going to start to expand my circle, and I'm going to do 9.8. That's going to give us a radius of 9.8 millimeters, which we're going to check here in just a second to make sure our measurements are right. I'm going to hit the erase tool to erase that measurement line that I drew. Let me get on it here. There it is. And so now what I can do is use my measuring tool, which is in millimeters, and I'm going to measure just one side of my circle. It doesn't matter where you go, you're just going to go straight across. And if you look at it, 19.6 millimeters. So 19.5 is what we had to do, so we actually have a 1/10 of a millimeter more, which is fine for us for what we're trying to do. So now my hole is there. I have to use the push-pull tool. So I'm going to use the push-pull tool. I'm going to get to the middle here to use my push-pull tool. I'm going to push in. Oh, no, I am going the wrong direction here. Let's undo this. I'm going to use the push-pull tool. Click on that. I'm going to push in. Oh, and I'm going to do 50 millimeters. And, oh, hang on a second here. What did I do? Let's do my circle tool again. Circle tool again. Put it right at the middle, at the center point. Let's get here on my line. Let me get centered. Yeah. There we go. I'm centered on my line. I'm going to go up and I'm going to do 9.8 millimeters. And there's my circle. So then I'm going to use my push-pull tool. Push-pull. Selecting my face. I'm going to push it in some. 50 millimeters. And there's the hole for us. So then, when I have got this, and I want to use my zoom to or my orbit tool to kind of look around, I have a hole that is 19.5 millimeters, that is 50 millimeters deep. If I want to check my measurements, again, I can take my measuring tool. I can start on the edge here, endpoint to endpoint, 19.6. I can also start here on the face, going deep, 50.1. So I can get all those measurements that I want to get. So I can test all the measurements to see what I've got here. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to need to get our holes for our axles. So we are going to use our orbit tool, and I'm only going to do the one axle on the back of the car to let you guys know where you're at. So what you want to do is you want to get so that you can see the back corner or the front corner. So you have to be at an angle that you can see the one side, it doesn't matter which side, and the opposite back corner of that side. So I'm going to do the back so I can see the left side and the right back corner. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take out my measurement tool, and I'm going to measure from the edge of my model, which is the endpoint axis, and I'm going to measure along my line here. And I am going to go in, just for sake of it, I want to give myself a pretty good wheelbase. So I'm going to go in 30 millimeters, right? And you see I've got a nice little black line that's here. So that's my guide point. From that guide point, then I'm going to go up, and I'm on the face, which is going to be on the side of my model, and I am going to go up 10. Actually, I'm going to split it because 10 millimeters is the max. So I'm going to go up 7 millimeters. And oh, my guide point messed up here. So I'm going along. We start along my edge. I'm going along the edge 30 millimeters. So there's my guide point. So then I'm going to get to my guide point, click again, and I'm going up 7 millimeters. And I'm going to hit the enter key. So that's going to be my 7 millimeters. Right. So now when I've got this, so this is going to be where we want. This is really important because you do not want to get too much ground clearance before you put your axle, because if you have too much down below when you have your axle here, your car will actually drag. So the closer that you put your axle hole to the bottom, you want to make sure that you've got enough room to at least 2 millimeters to you, so you've got plastic around your axle hole. But if you make your axle hole way too far up here, your wheels won't touch the ground and your car won't be able to roll. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to create my hole. So again, I'm going to make my circle, and I've got it on the face, and I'm going to find that point that I just set up. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to start to open up here. Okay, so now using that same principle, the diameter of a hole needs to be a total of 4 millimeters. So we need to make the radius 2 millimeters. So I'm going to put in a 2, and I hit the enter key, which is going to give me a 2 millimeter hole. Okay, do not make your diameter confused with your radius. Radius is half your circle. So half of 4 is 2. So now I have my circle at 4. To make this so that I know what I'm looking at, I'm going to erase my guideline. So I don't have my guideline here. And so now I've got my 4 millimeter hole there. So now to get my hole in here, I'm going to use the push-pull tool. I'm going to use the push-pull tool. I'm going to go to the hole, and you can see how it gets the little dotted dots on it. So I'm going to click on it one time. I'm going to start to push through, but when I'm pushing through, I'm not going straight through anymore. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move my cursor down, and I'm going to get to this far point that says endpoint. Once I get to the far point that says endpoint, I'm just going to click once. When I go to the opposite corner endpoint, that's me saying I want to get rid of this and make it a hole. So now when I go and I look through and I move my model all the way down, I can see that I have, if I get it shaped right, I get it moved right, I can see I've got a hole that goes all the way through my shape. So that's going to be how you do it. When I set my hole for the front end, you want to make sure that it's the same height. So I did 7 millimeters for mine. So I would find where I want to do my hole on the front end, make sure that I'm coming up 7 millimeters, and I would duplicate and make the same hole there. So I could see exactly what we've got. This is your basic dragster blank. When we get done, you would want to make sure that you click the save, click to make it a model. Call it your first name, C02 blank. So I'm going to call it Burke, and I'm going to call this car blank. I'm going to hit OK. It'll ask me where I'm saving it. I'm going to save it into my Sketchup folder, and you want to make sure that you are saving often so that if you lose anything, you can always go back. So I save it into my Sketchup folder, and there it is. That is the beginning of your dragster blank.